Deputy Jennings, would you like to get started? And I'll go ahead and share the calls for service map. I'll pull this up here. Oh, you guys need to stop sharing yours so I can share mine. And just keep to note that the calls for service map is just calls that have come in for service, not convicted crimes. And then you can also look this up on our website under the crime map. I'll go ahead and scroll through this. If Deputy Jennings, is your mic working now?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We got you.
Awesome. Yeah, so as you can see, the red triangles here, those are thefts. We're still having a lot of package thefts and catalytic converter thefts. So that 9 p.m. routine is still critical. You know, make sure you got your lights on, make sure you bring in any valuables, make sure you don't leave any valuables in your car. My brother-in-law actually just had his car broken into because he left a bag on the back seat. That was not in our area, but nonetheless, still a personal impact because he left something out in the open, unfortunately. Yeah, does anyone have any questions about kind of the crimes for December 2021?
So raise your hands as an attendee, or speak up if you're a panelist and if you'd have a question. And we'll give a couple seconds here. I see no questions. All right. that works. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, then we'll go ahead and give you guys just a couple of safety messages here. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat. Over in Aloha, we had a couple of incidences this fall, and it happens every summer usually, but we did have a couple of stranger incidences where strangers were patrolling through parks and approaching young children. So we helped to update our stranger awareness flyer, and I'll go ahead and put that in. And we also just want to do a couple of winter weather reminders. Deputy Jennings, you're on the road. Do you have any good tips for them?
Yeah, so actually over the last couple of weeks when we had both the snow and the heavy rain, I was working. We did have some high water off West Union once you get past 185th and you see the farmland there. If you start seeing the water coming over the road, please stop and find another way around. It takes about 6 inches of moving water to be able to take control of your car, and you're not going where you want to go anymore. It's not worth it. It's definitely better to, you know, find another way that's going to be 10 minutes longer, because you don't want you or your family to get stuck in the swamp or, you know, stuck in a river or something like that. It looks benign, but it's not. And you don't know how deep it is. That's the thing. It might look shallow, but it could be very deep. And then as far as winter driving, there's, you know, we're only in January. We get snow in February sometimes, and sometimes as late as March. So if you encounter snow, make sure you just slow down. I know that up and down Bethany Boulevard and the side streets there, the speed's 35, but that might be too fast for the conditions. And just right around the QFC Bethany Boulevard area, we had somebody go straight through the intersection at Mitchell, which is a block or two south of the QFC, and they went straight into the brick wall on the other side of the intersection because they were going a little bit too fast for the conditions, and they couldn't stop their car in time. I want to meet all of you guys, but I don't want to meet you that way.
Thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, let us know. I am also putting in the chat. Many of you may not know that we did update the Washington County alert system. So you do have to re-sign up. And during those winter weather closures, some streets were closed or it had winter weather warnings where you could actually get ticketed if you didn't have the right traction devices, which we really tried to work on education instead. So signing up for those alerts is another great way to go. So I'll put that in the chat for you, and I'll put my contact information if you have any other questions that come up after we leave.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know a lot of the creeks and streams have turned into small lakes at this point, so it's it's pretty exciting driving around. All right, and let's see. Do we have anyone from THPRD here? Let's.
Hi.
There we are. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Liana. It's my first time with you all, so I'm really excited to be with the CPO now. As you may have heard, Janine is moving on to a really amazing place in Colorado. I'm so excited for her, but sad to see her go, and delighted to be your new THPRD representative. I look forward to kind of getting to know what you all, what are the issues and kind of subjects that you all want to hear about more and more as I come to your meetings. I know other NACs and CPOs I've been to kind of have these things that they're really excited about, like trails or natural areas. And I see Mary's hand is up, so I'll take a pause.
So Leanna, I've got a question about the park that is in Bannister Creek. It washed out last winter. It has washed out again this winter. So are there any plans in the works to do improvements that will prevent the park from being washed out?
Well, that's a great question, Mary. I'm not familiar enough with that particular, I mean, I'm familiar with Bannister Creek, but I'm not sure kind of where we are on that. And as always, if I can't answer a question, what I can do is check back in with the team, get some information for you. What is the best way to follow up? Would you all prefer that I email the chair, like you all as chairs, or follow up with you one-on-one? What's the best way?
You could send an email to our CPO7 leaders at gmail.com, and that'll get us in touch with the entire leadership team.
Okay.
And you actually could just come back with an answer to that question next month as well.
Oh, okay, will do. Yeah, always. If you all have questions, like I say, I probably can't answer a lot of them, but hopefully I'll have answers to some of them, and I'm happy to follow up. Oh, I see that email. Andrew.
No worries.
That's great. I do have a couple updates from THPRD, and we typically have like a lot of different updates we can share, but I have a tendency to just really focus on those that I think are relevant to your neighborhood. Like I'm not going to necessarily share like a community garden cleanup all the way in the south side of the district, for example. But there are a couple things that are really relevant, I think, in your CPO right now that I did want to share. And those include, there is, if you haven't heard already, I think I've shared it with some of you, that there is a survey at the PCC Rock Creek Dog Park. It's an open survey on a proposed change to that dog park that would allow for separate spaces year round for large and small dogs. And we would just love to hear what people hope for and what people would most prefer, so we can be responsive to that. The survey closes on the 15th this weekend. So you want to try to take that by this weekend or share it out with your neighbors as soon as you can. We'd love to hear from you on that. And then the other thing I thought was pretty relevant just across the district generally is that staff are really monitoring and responding to hazard trees, especially in natural areas and in trail corridors. If you all see a tree that has hanging limbs or looks unsafe, please let us know. You can fill out an email us form on our webpage or call us to report that, however is convenient for you. So those are the two kind of big things right now. Of course, we're in a big hiring phase right now. We're really trying to come back from some of those hits we took during the pandemic. So if you know anyone who's looking, we would love to hear from them and see if there are any opportunities that they'd be interested in. Beyond that, I'll stop there. Are there any other questions that I can take back to THPRD for you all?
Maybe just on those two. So how do people, so if like the dog park, for example, is there a good place to find or just direct link to that?
Yeah, in fact, I'll put a direct link in the chat for you. From the webpage under news, you can usually find links to surveys generally,
Okay.
but it is really helpful to have that direct link. So I'm going to pop it into that chat there for you.
We also have it listed on our CPO7 Facebook page.
There we go.
So if you go there and scroll through, you should be able to find it.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. And we have a question in chat, I do see. Let's see. It looks like Stacy was asking here about how are park improvements maybe triggered? Like, what's the process for in a certain area? Like, how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat here too to help. Park improvements. Yeah, so those can look so different depending on the situation. So there are park improvements that we're able to do through bond measure. So like a lot of the park improvements we did with the 2008 bond measure were to existing parks. And then there are park improvements that we can do through grants. Those are a little bit more rare and more difficult to find. And then park improvements in terms of, there are some regular cycles for different parks if they need updating in terms of like safety of play equipment, for example, or safety of a bridge. So a lot of those parks are on a regular rotation for those kinds of updates. In terms of park improvements generally, we usually pull from, for a lot of those improvements, we're not able to pull from our systems development charges or our SDC funds because the jurisdiction doesn't allow us to do that based on, it has to be about like, the improvement would have to be about expanding access for population growth. And sometimes it qualifies for that and sometimes it doesn't. So usually we pull out of general funds for those. And that can look like a lot of different things. So sorry, that's a lot of information for you. But if you have some like a very specific park or place in mind that you're thinking of, I might be able to provide more information. Oh, I see some in the chat.
So she was specifically asking about North Bethany, and I think North Bethany is one of those specific situations where you have been collecting system development charges, and part of that money is going toward purchase of the land. But there's also, I guess, hope that there's going to be enough so you can actually put in place improvements as well.
And improvements is like, just to make sure I'm speaking on the right thing here. Improvements is like a new park in an open space, or is that like improving an existing park, the equipment at an existing park?
Well, specifically North Bethany. North Bethany is kind of a unique situation in that it was green, entirely green space, and green fields. That's the word I'm looking for. And housing was built, and as the housing was built, you collected system development charges, but you've had to use part of that money to purchase parkland as that's happened. But the problem is a lot of that parkland is unimproved. So even though THPRD has purchased the land, I think a lot of the people who live in North Bethany are like, okay, well, we've got this park, but it doesn't have any improvements. What are we going to have to wait for?
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. So you're not talking necessarily about, like, let's say Ulrich Gerber Park, improving that or adding stuff to that park. You're talking about those open green spaces that have never had a park developed on them as of yet. And that's a great question. And it depends a lot on the exact, like, for example, we have some of those, and Janine may have talked to you about these too. We have some of those open spaces right now that we kind of have on the docket to come up for development, and then some that are a little later on the docket for development. So if you had an exact like intersection, that would be super helpful. I can kind of tell you where a certain area is in the line for development. I'm also kind of reading through. And then if there's certain areas that we own that have like maintenance issues, you can always contact us too. So brand new land, currently weeds and poorly rough graded. Yeah, needs fine grading grass at minimum, Victor. Yeah, so definitely, like, if you have specific intersections or properties, I can give you more detailed information on those. Yeah.
And you provided your contact information in the chat? Yeah,
I don't know that I have yet, actually. It's coming your way.
And always, if you can't figure out how to contact Leanna, you can email our CPO leaders at gmail.com, and we can forward the information on to Leanna.
Yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions about that. That is like there are so many different properties I know up in North Bethany, and now I'm seeing a few here. So that's really helpful. So what I can do is kind of take some of this, like if you have certain intersections, I'm seeing Lakemont and Batman Street, then I can collect more information and get back to you all.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else from me that I can help with right away? Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll keep an eye on the chat as you all move forward to make sure I don't miss any additional intersections or questions.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. There we go. Cool. And let's see here. Does anybody want to give, well, I think TV Fire was doing their updates on YouTube still. So I think we're all set, right?
Yeah, TVFNR hasn't had a new one since August.
Awesome. Okay. Well, our main topic today, oh, good timing, worked out well. So thank you everyone for your updates. The main topic today is, I think we have everybody here now. So I'll let them introduce themselves and kick it off here, but mostly we're talking about what's going on in the North Bethany area and what's going on with the boundary. So the stage is yours.
There we go. Let's unmute. All right. So good to see everyone's names at the very least. My name is Victor Sin. I'm Metro Policy Advisor. Specifically, I'm the Policy Advisor to Councilor Gonzalez out here in District 4. And with me, I've got Tim O'Brien, who's one of our principal planners. And I first wanted to start off by saying Councilor Gonzalez sends his deepest apologies. He just feels completely awful today. We're hoping that it isn't what we think it is, but wishing him a good, healthy recovery. But we hope to be back. I know Mary's going to be looking at future agendas. We definitely want to be back to provide an update on District 4 and Metro highlights in the near future, hopefully in February or March. But in the meantime, I'm thankful and lucky that Tim was able to join us tonight to talk through issues surrounding North Bethany and boundaries, and provide a high-level summary of some of the questions that were posed regarding the issue. So I don't know, Mary, if you wanted to kind of summarize the issues and then Tim can speak on them, or would you like Tim to kind of provide the general process going forward?
Sure, I can kind of describe the problem. In 2002, North Bethany was brought inside the urban growth boundary. And during the planning process, Shackelford Road was designed to be really a backbone of the transportation structure for North Bethany. And at that point, at the point that planning was happening, there was a realization that the road was going to have to go outside the urban growth boundary, and there was a state exception allowed to allow the road to be built. Unfortunately, funding for the road was not put in place, and the county's position was, let's wait until this parcel between North Bethany and 185th comes in, and they will help finance the needed road. And so here we are, in 2022, and the rules have changed with the Metro requiring a city to take responsibility for planning before an area can be brought inside the urban growth boundary. And because Hillsborough is acres away, and the city of Beaverton is acres away in terms of being able to connect to the parcel that's needed, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place with not being able to bring in land that's really a critical piece for the infrastructure of North Bethany. And so we're asking the question at this point because the next UGB expansion is going to happen in 2024. And we'd like to know now, is there something our community can do to push this issue forward? So did that outline it well enough?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary. I know we've got 23 folks in attendance, so it's a nice summary for them to understand the issues. And certainly my role in this is just to take that feedback that I'm receiving from you all to Councilor Gonzalez so that he can think on it and see how he can best support CPO 7 and this community. But in the meantime, I'd love Tim to kind of walk us through the general process. And I know one of the questions you posed, Mary, is like identifying any sort of barriers. And so I think Tim can outline that pretty well. So go ahead, Tim.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. Tim O'Brien, Metro Planning Department. Thank you, Mary, for that summary. Not sure quite where to start. There's a lot to say here on this. You are correct. After 2002, when North Bethany was brought into the urban growth boundary, after that process, Metro went through, as you probably all were, along with the counties in the region, to develop urban and rural reserves first. So that was one of the process that we went through, and I'm sure a number of you, seeing some of the names on here, were involved with that. And so we did end up getting the urban and rural reserves set. So that land you are interested in between North Bethany and 185th is an urban reserve area. You are also correct that after the 2002 expansion and leading up to the 2005 and 6 expansions for industrial land, we did change the process for bringing land into the urban growth boundary. What we did was requiring the concept plan being done before land is brought into the urban growth boundary. If some of you can remember, back in 2002, we added quite a lot of land. Some of it not always in areas of people that some local jurisdictions were necessarily happy about at the time, and the land has sat there for a long time. It has not moved at all, and I'm sure you all can realize that Damascus is probably one of the the main culprits of that. So we did change the process where, if we were going to expand the urban growth boundary, we wanted the local jurisdiction who's ultimately going to provide the urban services to the area to want to provide urban services to the area, and then also to go through a process identifying the needs, the infrastructure needs, the roads, sewer, water, and so on, as well as any natural resource protection measures, cost estimates, as well as potential funding sources for providing those urban services. So that's kind of the reason for the concept plan. Is we want, if we're going to expand the UGB, there's a local government that's ready to provide the services to it and do the planning for it. In the meantime, from it all kind of the same time frame, Washington County held what they call the Urbanization Forum, and it was a forum they held with all their cities within the county, and they made the determination that for future urban growth boundary expansion areas, the ideal is that a city would provide the urban services to it. And the county would not be the urban service provider in the future. For the specific area you're mentioning, the subject area there, let me step back for 1 second. Washington County also completes urban planning area agreements with each of the individual cities in the county. And for this specific area, the urban planning area agreement for, I believe it was for Beaverton, was the most recently one that was done, shows the area as an area of undesignated service provider, if you will, or I'm trying to look for the exact name of it. Basically what it means is they haven't, an urban reserve planning responsibility undecided. That was the how this area is identified. So the county, Beaverton and Hillsborough have not determined who would ultimately be the urban service provider for this area. As I think Mary mentioned, neither city is really actually very close to the area in any great significance. So that kind of hits a crux to this kind of issue here is who would do the concept planning for this area, for this small urban reserve area. I don't believe the county is interested in doing that in the future, and neither is probably either of the cities at this point in time. So that is kind of one of the big hurdles, I would say, at this point in time, and who would actually lead the planning effort for this area. One thing I also want to point is you mentioned in 2024, this is when we do our legislative process. And when we make an expansion in the urban growth boundary, I'm sure many of you know, we have to find a need for housing, basically. We have to find a need for housing or employment land to make the determination and be in compliance with state law. So what we would have to do is also, beyond a concept plan being done for this area, Metro, when we do our urban growth report, would also have to find a need for housing. And in such a small area, sometimes that is difficult. For this area is quite small. The amount of housing that you could actually develop there is not significant in the grand scheme of things for the region. And so finding a need for the housing just for this one area would be difficult, to say the least. I don't know how much more I can say at this point in time, Mary. It might be if more clarification questions or something. There's just some of the main hurdles really is the concept plan requirements that we do have, and then who is going to be the one who would do that concept planning for this area. And it's usually an agreement between the county and the city about who would do the concept planning for the area. And obviously neither city has been designated as or has agreed also to have this in the urban planning area.
So Tim, I think I guess I need personally a clarification, because it's my understanding that it's actually Metro's rule that says it must be a city, but you're saying that it's Washington County, that the decision was made at the Washington County level within Washington County that it needs to be a city.
Washington County, yes, Washington County had what they called the Urbanization Forum, and I see Greg Malinowski is on here, and he was probably on the board at that time, so he may remember that. And that was the county working with all the cities, and they made that decision, that it was a policy decision, my understanding from the county, that future urban growth boundary expansion areas would be governed by a city. For instance, region-wide, if Clackamas County itself wanted to do a concept plan for some area in Clackamas County, they could. Our code, the way our code reads for the concept plan is a county or a city.
Great.
And complete
great.
the concept plan.
That helps clarify some of my thinking, because at that point we know who to lobby. Don't bother with Metro. It's our county commissioners that we need to twist arms with. So, I think at this point it would be great just to open it up to questions from the general population out there.
And I see we have
there's Pam.
current board members as well.
So Pam, do you have a comment on that?
Well, I would defer. It looks like Greg has his hand up. Frankly, my understanding was that it was a Metro decision, that it had to be that any urban growth expansion had to be affiliated with the city. So Greg, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so from being there with the discussion, from the original plan forward, there's no way the traffic would work for Bethany in a build out unless that connection was made. And the fact that they're going to probably make a huge break in Springville when they do some renovation in a year or so here for widening Springville just means that I just see it as kind of a disaster. But one of the problems was there was concern, it was brought in, and there was concern that there wouldn't be enough housing in that area available, as Tim said, to trigger the necessity of putting in the urban growth boundary. So we had received permission in Washington County to build a 2-acre road across that field to 185th, so that in fact the traffic system over there would work. And the board majority decided to go ahead and, in order to help that landowner sell his property for development, decided to agree that he would only have to pay half the development of building that bridge. But he had to get in the urban growth boundary. So he kind of, what they did at the time was kind of take the community hostage and say, okay, you're going to help this guy be able to sell and develop his land, or you're going to live without this road and your traffic system will fail. And that was the decision that they made at the time. It would be cheaper for the taxpayers of Washington County to build a 2-lane bridge and a 2-lane road across to 185th than it would be for them to build half of a 5-lane road and a 5-lane bridge. Technically, it could be 4 lanes, but you get a 5-lane bridge and install an intersection with signals for the landowner. It's just cheaper to build the 2-lane road. So I've always said we should just build the 2-lane road, build the 2-lane bridge, and then that landowner and developer, the community won't be taken hostage to try and force this through. And the landowner can pay whatever he needs to widen that bridge and widen the road and put in those lights for his economic benefit. I will say that it's a good idea, I think, not letting that in without a city. And part of that is we know that once a piece of ground is developed and it's brand new, trying to get that to annex to a city for services is a 40 or 50-year process. Reedville's gone longer than that. So part of this was to cut off this increasing load that was being placed on the county to provide urban services for an area outside the city limits. I saw that as a critical problem as well. And so of course, I'm not really in favor of doing away with that. But I wish everybody would get back to the original agreement we had when that area was developed. They couldn't justify putting that ground in the urban growth boundary then. And now they come up with a way to make it a very high cost program. And I think the taxpayers would be better off building the 2-lane road, the 2-lane bridge, and let the next guy who's going to make money do it. That's my observation from working with them. Thank you.
So we have another hand up. Glenn Shirley. And I should know how to
I got it. Sorry.
Oh, great. Okay.
Glenn, you're able to speak if you'd like.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Glenn Shirley. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Yeah, I wonder if you remember me from our battles with PGE up here on Germantown Road.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And also Jeff Petrillo and also Greg Malinowski. We were all warriors from that battle. Yeah, I mean, what I noticed when I saw this announcement for this meeting and the way you described it, Mary, was this is a problem to be solved. In other words, there's a problem here, and you know, let's try to find out how to solve it. And I'm not completely sure exactly whose problem this is. I mean, it sounded to me from Mr. O'Brien that, you know, there were rules put in to sort of ensure that there's a concept plan developed for that property in an orderly fashion. And you know, well, first of all, I'm not completely sure if the problem you're describing is that we need a way to put it to develop a concept plan, or we should just move the urban growth boundary without a concept plan. That's one question. And another question would be, are you planning, or is the problem that you're solving essentially a waiver of the existing rule, which sounds to me like the rule was put in place for a good reason, just for this location? Or would the waiver of the rule also affect other properties that are just outside the urban growth boundary? Keeping in mind, you know, that Greg has a property like this, which wouldn't, you know, so it just raises a question in one's mind about the sort of motivations really for this proposed rule change. I mean, you know, this whole discussion is proceeding as if the premise is, here's a problem, let's solve it. And Mr. O'Brien sort of described pretty clearly to me, actually, why the rules are there. And I haven't actually heard a clear explanation of why they need to be waived. And also, are they waived just for this spot or for in general, all over the place and forever? So that's kind of my thoughts about that and what made me show up here. So maybe Mary, you can address that.
You know, I think we've heard over and over again from people who live in North Bethany that they were anticipating an alternative way to get out of their neighborhoods, that you know, they're having to drive through existing neighborhoods to get down to a major road. Right now we're talking about improvements on Springville Road, and the question becomes, how big does that road need to be built, because it's having to carry more of a load of North Bethany traffic. Jost Road, one of the major roads out of North Bethany, the traffic travels right by an elementary school. It's posted at 25 miles an hour, and at this point they're going through a process of trying to reduce the speed on the road, because it's both volume and speed, high speed traffic. So it's more, you know, about building a community that people want to live in, that allows.
Well, keep in mind, of course, that, you know, there are implications for traffic on the other side of it as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, every change has a yeah.
I don't know if we're trying to frame it as a problem versus, you know, just I've already learned something so far in this meeting, which is that I had no idea that the county could bring in. I'd always heard about the city side as well. So
yeah,
I think it's really just trying to inform here, and at least
it did sound very, look, Reed, and this the reason I'm here, as if it was framed as a problem, and the way you described it, Mary, before, was as a problem to be solved.
Well, it's a problem to be solved or a problem to be ignored, because definitely the people who live in North Bethany have expressed concern, and it is a problem for them.
For them.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. And, you know, it was part of the plan. That's when we get down to, you know, the basic facts, it was part of the plan.
My question about, are you asking for a waiver or something just for this location?
We're just
interested in all options.
we're just asking for information so we can better understand.
If the rule changes globally, that has implications all around the urban growth boundary, right?
Well, and we're not asking for a global change. We're asking for an exception for this one particular situation. And I think, you know, we would be very clear about that, you know, we're special,
well, that
and we need
clarifies
special
it for
rules.
me. Good.
Cool. All right, thank you. I see Sarah and Pam. I didn't see an order there, but all right, Pam's waving. Sarah, go ahead. You should be able to unmute if you'd like.
Yep, there we go.
And then I'll go Pam, and then I see Lisa. So,
Okay. I was gonna see if I could turn my video on to say hi to everyone. Okay, so I was on the North Bethany Service District for roads. So my understanding, and I've researched the urban growth boundary personally. So it sounds like my understanding is that we first, the rural reserve first needs to be approved by Metro to be put into the UGB. Is that correct?
Well, this is Tim O'Brien at Metro. It's an urban reserve area.
Urban reserve, right?
Yeah, not rural reserve, because that's definitely a no-no.
Right.
And it would have, the point I was saying before is the concept plan requirement that's in our code requirement that would have to be done before any urban growth boundary expansion occurs. And then depending, there is this, we've never done an urban growth boundary expansion just for a road that I'm aware of. And in the normal cycle, there is a requirement that under state law, we have to find a need for either housing or employment land to meet a regional need for it. So it's a bit more complicated, I guess.
Right. But I'm just trying to, for clarification points for all of us, to go back to what is the original process before we can even get to whether how a road could be funded or whatever. That area needs to be part of the UGB. So we need to first be advocating for that area to be put into the UGB, and whatever those requirements are, concept plan, development, residential development, or for a, right, I forget what you said, but the commercial space for work, those have to be met. So, and that's approved by Metro, is that correct?
Yes, Metro would make the urban growth boundary decision, and then it actually gets approved by the state ultimately.
Okay, right. And what's the timeline on that? If this is up for review in 2024, when does that process begin?
Well, in my view, if there was a concept plan being done for an area, it probably should be going right now or pretty close to it.
Right.
They usually take, obviously there's a lot of that goes into it and to get done. So it takes a while for that to get done.
Right. And then who, under regular circumstances, who does a concept plan? Like who develops that and provides that?
Well, for instance, as an example, in the past, City Beaverton has done it for the Cooper Mountain area, or City Tigard for the River Terrace area. So normally, like I said, based on the, based on the results of the urbanization forum, that in Washington County, it has been a city who has done that. And truthfully, even in other parts of the region, it has been a city and not a county doing the concept plans. But yes, that's typically it is a city.
Right. But we also have the cherry stem rule, correct? Like you can't just, that got, I guess, improved, that we can't, Beaverton can't just annex by street, up a street to get the next area that they want. So we'd really have to be looking at coordination with Hillsborough or Beaverton. So that's going to take any disconnected areas right now to also be brought in, unless we negotiate in a waiver at this. Can the waiver be negotiated in at this concept planning time?
I know people have been talking about it. We don't have a waiver in our process for that. It's just, there's a requirement that a concept plan needs to be done. I'm not a legal counsel, so I can't elaborate on that, but we don't have a waiver process, put it that way, in our code.
Right. So we are talking about something bigger than this area. Sorry, my husband's watching the national championship game. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, before we even begin to look at funding and things, you know, unfortunately, probably 10 years down the road, we need this first step figured out. It would be my focus for the CPO, the North Bethany group, whatever, is to understand this process and get this, because this sounds like it's going to be a bigger deal. I mean, whatever, you know, according to what Mr. Malinowski, you know, whatever the agreements were before, I mean, are those null and void? Are those moot at this point?
I don't feel I can respond to that, because I think Mr. Malinowski probably knows more about it, as he was involved in it at that time.
Greg, are you still on? Do you want to weigh in on that, or?
Yes, there I go. Sure. Well, I think part of the issue was that the folks who own that property were the Peter Court family. It's actually a group called the Peter Court Cousins. They were kind of trying to branch out on their own, and they'd gotten a hold of the property so they could, you know, make all kinds of money, of course, once it's in the urban growth boundary. I don't know if those folks are all still alive now or not. I don't know if the property's changed hands. I'm sure that taking the value of the property from, you know, 40,000 an acre to 900,000 an acre, probably whoever owns it would be interested in seeing that happen. My big concern is of course, I didn't want it to be successful, because then everybody who owns land would like to find a way to get the taxpayers to foot half of the bill for road infrastructure. And I don't think that's a message we want to spread around a lot. To me, I think I'd go ahead and, like I say, put the 2-lane road in. That deal, like I said, I don't know if the Peter Court, they were all in their 60s and 70s at the time, and that's been 10 years ago. I don't know where they are now. I would guess somebody else owns it, though, who wouldn't mind the subsidy if they can get it. But to me, we just put in what we need to make the traffic work. And then if somebody needs to put in something else to make a ton of money, then that's part of their investment. That's the way I've looked at it.
So Greg,
does that answer your question?
Greg, excuse me, Glenn here. Are you just proposing, you know, putting a road through, and that's it? That's what you're thinking, right?
I think that's the cheapest, fastest route to do it. We have permission from LCDC to build the road tomorrow if we want it. What they did when they tried to figure out how to finance North Bethany was they tried to shove as much off onto adjoining landowners or taxpayers, somebody else besides the people who currently own the North Bethany area. Otherwise, they'd have had to pay for it. And they talked us out of doing an LID to get it done like we usually do, to create a special taxing district only for the new landowners in the Bethany area. So, I mean, that's how they decided to handle it then, but you still got these orphan pieces of road all around the outside. But this one particular piece, they had to include, because otherwise the plan would not have worked, and they wouldn't have been able to finish the planning and say, yes, this will fly. They needed at least a 2-lane road across there. And that means some work on 185th too, between that 2-lane road and the intersection with Springville. So, I mean, but I didn't have much patience for this friends and family deals that were being cooked up all over.
Okay.
Pam, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah,
Feel free. Yeah, jump in.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. First of all, it seems to me that the extension of Shattuck Road was part of the original plan. So it seems a little backwards to have to justify to Metro or anybody else about putting that road in. And first of all, about creating a UGB expansion and putting that road in when that was part of the original plan to start with the housing needs and the transportation needs in relationship to what has turned out to be a very built up area there with transportation needs. And I think that that's what everyone's saying here, Mary, Sarah, Greg, everyone. So what the missing piece for me is why do we have to do any type of work in relationship to this if that was part of the original plan? So Tim, you're asking for, the fact that we should have a concept plan. Well, the concept plan was already there. I'm just raising this question that I think the rules changed in between the development of Bethany and where we are today in relationship to UGB expansion. And that's the issue that I don't understand. And for those of you with a longer history here, am I missing something?
I think what I could share is it's a funding issue. And the decision was made not to build Shackelford out to 185th because it was going to be too expensive to do. And the property owners in North Bethany, the developers in North Bethany did not want to have to bear the cost. And the way to deal with it was to say, well, when that other piece comes inside the urban growth boundary, they will pay for that. They will pay for half the bridge and the road out to 185th.
With the development fees.
With the development fees from the parcel between North Bethany and 185th.
Okay.
Which, at this point,
but still the crux is that we can't get no matter what, we can't get it into the we can't get it into the UGB to be able to do the work. Correct, Mary?
Well, to get the funding that the county was hoping to get from
to do the development to get the road.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we've kind of lost a piece of the plan.
Right. So and what I'm hearing tonight, which is news to me, is that it's a Washington County decision. Because I was always under the impression when we look at the UGB expansions in King City, in Sherwood, and in other places throughout the county, that they were predicated upon proximity and annexation to the cities for those UGB expansions to move forward.
Well, except for that, if we just build the road, we don't actually need to expand the UGB. If we had funding, we wouldn't need to expand the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be interested in learning about some options there too, right? So
right. Well, okay. But Sherwood, their expansion and their road developments were funded by the development of the homes in that area as well, right?
Yes.
So I still think that the issue is that connection to a city, which Mary, you outlined in the very beginning. The new data for me, or the new information for me from Tim, is that isn't a decision that was made by Metro.
Absolutely, that was new information to me. And there really isn't any reason why we can't have the county do a concept plan other than you guys have staff to do it and you don't have the funding to do it.
Right.
So,
right.
And then there's the other question of, could the case be made for bringing in that small parcel, because it apparently isn't large enough to generate enough housing to make it worthwhile to Metro?
It's if I could, it's a couple different things. Commissioner Treese, it was a resolution in 2009 that the board passed, the urbanization forum. I looked it up. So it was a resolution that the county board passed,
Okay.
wanting new urban areas to be governed by a city. So that's where that came from. Back then, and it was 2009. Mary, what the point being, when we have to make a decision, it's difficult for us to find a regional need, for example, for 200 houses, when we have, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of house, you know, capacity in the region for homes. So it's just, it's unfortunate, but it's part of the state law that we have to follow. We have to follow a regional need for housing or employment land, which doesn't always play directly towards what each individual community wants. And that's, you know, if I could, that's kind of a little bit of a rub and against the way the land use system is.
It's the way the rules are, but at the same time, you know, who made the rules? And the rules aren't always perfect. And we are missing a critical piece of this particular community.
Well, and
This
unfortunately,
community
those
is
rules
not
are from the state and not from us.
Well,
Is there any possibility of revisiting? So, I mean, that decision that in the plan, I guess, kind of assumed that or put it under a UGB expansion. I mean, is there any way to revisit that, saying like, hey, this is now, you know, the rules change, this is no longer a possibility, and so whoever did the plan originally, hey, you know, there's no funding this way, you have to connect this, or or at least consider where the dollars come from to build a road there. So it seems like the UGB route is extremely complicated and, you know, long and maybe unlikely, but maybe fundraising to build the road, you know, to the couple points ago might be more feasible ultimately. So
just
anyway.
one thing I would bring up is, and Ms. Greg Malinowski brought it up too, is the county got a goal approval exception for a road across there through the rural area a number of years ago. And I think that's what Greg is referring to, is we can build the 2-lane road. To build a urban level road, 4 lanes, 5 lanes, whatever, bike lanes, streetlights, sidewalks, all that stuff, you would have to come into the urban growth boundary to do that, which obviously adds a lot of cost to any facility that gets built there. And I think Greg was mentioning before, he was talking about the 2-lane road, which I'm assuming, and I'm not completely sure of this, and this would be more county staff has to weigh in on that, is he was referring to the county who already received a goal exception from LCDC to build the road extension through the rural land prior to the designation of urban and rural reserves.
So does that mean there's a conflict between what, so obviously very expensive, very impossible to build for 4-lane, bike lanes, all that stuff, but does that mean that the exception would allow for a 2-lane still kind of thing?
I think
No
county
idea.
staff would probably have to weigh in
That's
on that, because I'm
interesting.
not even sure what the exception that they got from LCDC.
I mean, it would look funny given the state of the roads right now, but I mean, even a 2-lane might be enough. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
In the past, long ago, it was possible for the developers to get an exception overlay for North Bethany, which excluded an electrical substation. And that electrical substation wound up in an adjacent residential area, ours. So it just seems to me as if Washington County should be able to be creative enough to write an exception overlay in order to get a road through there. After all, they were able to get an electrical substation into our neighborhood.
Greg, do you have your hand up for a comment, or please just weigh in? We've been running this as a panel. So.
I do. I just wanted to stress what I was saying is that the method that was used to help the Peter Courts try and develop their land happened long after we got that permission for a 2-lane road. It's still good. It's still good. And so we got that long before. This was just an afterthought. It came up for time for an expansion, and the Peter Court said, how about us? And the county said, let's find a way of changing our policy and parameters so they have to come in. That's what I meant by taking hostage. I mean, it's like, it was never planned originally for that piece to come in, at least not officially. So, and the other thing is, we have the permission, if we have the money, and it will be cheaper for a 2-lane road and a 2-lane bridge. Keep in mind that when they talk about using the houses to offset the expensive of the bigger road, that it only offsets 1/3. So the taxpayers still have to, unless things have changed in the last 3 years, it only covers 1/3. The taxpayers are still going to have to pony up 2/3 to get that done. So it's just plain old cheaper to build 2 lanes at the county's expense and let the future sort out the future. And I'm hoping everybody's getting that. It's just cheaper for us to build 2 lanes than to build 2/3 of a 4-lane or a 6-lane or a 5-lane rather. So I just wanted to get that out. Will you have to have sidewalks on there? And should there be one 9 feet wide so people can get bikes back and forth? Yeah, I think you want to. But we have a few of those, I believe, outside the urban growth boundary now in rural areas. And so it's okay. It keeps the cars and the bicycles out of each other's way. But just wanted to throw that in. This has had a solution the whole time. It's just one that didn't make Peter Courts a lot of money. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they take $1 million and look the other way while we put the 2-lane road in, and we still might save money. I don't know. But it just seems to me not a good precedent.
Much as I hate to agree with you, Greg, I think you make sense. You know? Yeah.
Well, I think Commissioner Treese, between Councilor Gonzalez and our teams, we can kind of, put our heads together to see what some possibilities are and kind of talk through the issues. I'll take back questions that were posed tonight with county staff that I've been working with, and just try and work through some of the issues.
Sounds great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Pam.
And thank you everyone for your comments here. This is really, I think we had a couple discoveries here. So
I think Commissioner Treese was trying to say something. I think you're muted.
Oh, there we are.
Thank you, Victor. I was muted. I think, I appreciate you taking the information back. I'd like to structure this discussion for a future date when we have members of LUT here as well that can talk about this. I think that's a missing piece as well. And I'm in between meetings. I've got another meeting this evening, and so I thought, well, I'm going to just chime in here and see what's going on. So, and I'm sorry that Juan Carlos couldn't make it, but I'm not sure that he would have been able to add much more either. Greg actually has a lot of history here, and so does Mary, and I suspect Jeff Petrillo does as well. But I think the real issue is going to be what has the history been? What can we do moving forward? And frankly, what do we have funds for? And if that's the bottom line when it all comes to it. 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 8 lanes. It's really what do we have the funds for? And I know Greg's been in this situation, obviously, and that's where we are. And but I'd like to understand all the different aspects and go from there. So I'm appreciative of the conversation. So thank you.
So Andrew.
Yes. I'm still sticking to my bake sale idea, but okay. Bake sale for 2-lane roads. Yes, everyone, are we in? Okay.
I'll buy some brownies. I'm into some brownies.
I can bring the pie. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for your time. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for making this a productive panel discussion and for filling in the context like Commissioner Trees said as well. And thank you all. We'll wrap for tonight. Please reach out if you would like to if you have any information requests or you're curious about where to deliver comments to, and we'll go from there. Have a good night, everyone. And you're welcome to stick around for steering committee. We'll be a couple minutes. Off we go.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Victor, as well.
Thank you, Metro. Special thanks to Metro. Appreciate you being here. All right.
So Andrew, do you capture the chat?
I do. Yeah, there's some
Good.
there were some excellent comments made in there. So we get a recording and then we get a text file of the chat out of these. So yeah.
I have a hard time